Shalom Chukas Balak, Tavshin Pei Gimel. So this week we have two parshiyos, and finally we catch up to the parshiyos in Eretz Yisrael. And after this week, we will be reading the same portion in the Torah as our brethren in Eretz Yisrael. So this week we're going to learn Chukas Balak, and in Eretz Yisrael they're just going to read Parshas Balak. So what we're going to do is we're going to speak about the second of our two parshiyos this week. This way everybody's back together. People in Eretz Yisrael could appreciate it once again. Be'itoi uvizmanoi, and you'll hear the shir on the right parsha, on the right week. And it should be apparent to anyone that this ultra cryptic dialogue that was taking place in our parsha between Balak and Bilam, it cannot be just taken at face value of the translation of the words in the parsha. Before you even get to the Midrashim, before you even get to the Mamori Chazal, before you even get to all those things, if you just plain old read the Targum this week, it opens up what Bilam was talking about in the future, and what Balak was saying, and what was being put in Bilam's mouth. It's fascinating the amount of history and historic things that actually came to bear, that came true in later years. Bilam was speaking about things that were going to happen in the history of Klal Yisrael. And if you actually look into the Mefarshim and the Midrashim on the Parsha, it brings out this point very clearly, that what you read is not what you get. If you're just reading the plain words in this week's Parsha, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're missing out on something really unbelievable. So in our parsha, you look. So Bilam is talking, and things are coming out of his mouth that are just obviously driving Balak crazy. Balak wants Bilam to chas v'sholom, right, to curse Klal Yisrael, and Balak is not getting his way. He's trying and he's trying and he's trying, and Bilam is actually talking. And not only is he talking, but Bilam's animal starts talking too. So a lot of very, very unusual things are going on here. But suffice it to say that Balak was not a happy man. And Bilam seems to be extolling the virtues of Klal Yisrael. And one of the things that Bilam says in our parsha is a fascinating pasuk. And he says like this, and obviously the words are being put into Bilam's mouth. And he says, Lo hibit oven b'Yaakov. Many of you might be familiar with this pasuk. We read it actually on Rosh Hashanah in the davening also. Lo hibit oven b'Yaakov v'loi ra'ah amo b'Yisrael. Hashem Elokav Imoy Usruas Melech Boy. And because of the Trua at the end of the pasuk, that's why we mention it in the Malchi Zechronos and Shofros that we say on Rosh Hashanah in Musaf. And Rosh Hashanah is actually coming around pretty soon, pretty unbelievable. So you'll remember you learned a little bit more about this pasuk a few months before that. But what this pasuk essentially is saying is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo hibit oven b'Yaakov. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to see, he's not looking at the iniquities of Klal Yisrael, Mo b'Yisrael, that Hashem Kaviyachol does not see the things that Klal Yisrael, that Yidden are doing wrong. That's what Bilam says. So first of all, the famous kasha, the famous question on this pasuk, is that Chazal tell us in the Gemara Masechta Bava Kama Daf Nun Amud Aleph that a person is never allowed to say that Hashem doesn't see or looks away from anything. Hashem sees everything. Hashem knows everything. And a person is not supposed to say that Hashem is not looking at what I'm doing, that Hashem doesn't see what I'm doing. It's very clear that Hashem does see that. So what does it mean in our pasuk, Lehibit Oven B'Yakov, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not see the iniquities of Yaakov, which is Klal Yisrael? What does that mean? So the Nesivos Shalom tells us a very beautiful insight here. The end of that pasuk, as we said, of Lehibit Oven B'Yakov, is Hashem Eloikav Imoy Usruas Melech Boy. Hashem Eloikav Imoy. Hashem is, right? Hashem is with him. And the explanation says in Nesivos Shalom is as follows. That many times people have battles in their lives. And our biggest battles, we know, are with the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara doesn't matter how big a person you are, doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter how much experience you have with the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is always out to get you. He's always fighting, he's always pushing back, he doesn't want you to grow, he doesn't want you to do anything good. The Yetzer Hara, every person has constant battles with the Yetzer Hara. And sometimes the Yetzer Hara gets the better of a person, and a person slips, and a person does an Aveira. The idea that you have to remember is that when a Yid does an Aveira, inside the heart of a Yid is broken. Inside, every Yid wants to really be perfect. Every Yid wants to do good. Every Yid wants to grow. But we're human. And if we never slipped up, we would be malachim. But we're not malachim. So when a Yid slips up, it's really, really hurting. A Yid is full of pain because of the separation and the distance that is created between Hashem and himself when he slips up and he does an Aveira. So when you feel a little bit that you slipped and you went down, and a person does an Aveira, the pasuk is telling us Hashem Eloikav Imoy, that Hashem is still on your mind. Hashem is inside you. It bothers you. You don't do an Aveira with the whole L'Shem Yichud, and I'm so happy that I'm doing an Aveira. No person is that way. Hashem Eloikav Imoy, that even when you do an Aveira, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is inside you, and it bothers you that you've created a bit of a distance between yourself and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it is that type of Aveira that only Hashem, who knows the battles, and he knows what's inside you, and he knows how hard you're trying, and he knows how much you want. Nobody else in the world knows. People may judge you, they may say things about you, but they know nothing about you. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows the battles that you have and how much you are fighting inside, the inner struggles that you have, the inner struggles that are going on inside. So only HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who knows that, can say that even while you're doing Aveira, Hashem Eloikav Imoy, that Hashem is still inside. And that is Lehibit Oven B'Yakov, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows that it's not a complete Aveira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when another person may look at you, they see a person, you see a friend, you see a neighbor, you see yourself, that you're just doing an Aveira. But Hashem, about Hashem, it could be said, Lehibit Oven B'Yakov, because Hashem knows it's not a complete Aveira. He knows how much it bothers you. And the Nesivos Shalom adds another angle to this beautiful idea, to this point. And he says that the words Amol and Oven in the pasuk are not referring to the actual Aveira. And let me explain. He says, of course, Hashem sees, as we mentioned, Hashem sees everything that we do. But the pasuk, if you look at the pasuk does not say Lohibit ba'avonos Yisrael. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't look at all the chatoim of Yisrael. And he says that Amal and Oven refer to the things that follow after a person falters and after a person does an Aveira. As we know, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, the Mishnah famously teaches us Aveira, Goireres Aveira. And what does that mean? So there's a little different ways of translating what that means, but we're going to go with the explanation now that with every Aveira that a person does, the koyach of the Yetzer Hara within that person is compounded, and it becomes that much harder to fight your battles. That's Aveira, Gereres Aveira. And therefore, once you do something wrong, it is easier for you to do the next thing wrong. Those Aveiros that follow the original sin are called Amal and Oven. That a person is, Mamela, you're caused to do negative things because of that one sin that you did. So says in Nesivos Shalom, another angle on this pasuk, it is those things that Hashem does not focus on. When the pasuk says, "Lahibit Oven b'Yakov, v'lo ra'ah Amal b'Yisrael," it's the Oven and the Amal that come after a person when you're weakened already. You're in a weakened state. You don't have that same resolve to fight the Yetzer Hara because you already once did a sin. On those things, we're saying that Hashem does not focus on that. Why? Because of the reason that we said, Hashem Elokav Imoi. That Hashem sees that even at that time that you did an Aveira, even at that time of faltering, the Yid is still thinking of Hashem. He knows he's doing things keneged the Ratzon of Hashem, but yet at that moment he doesn't have the strength to fight the Yetzer Hara. And when a goy sins, it's a whole different story. It's done, quote, with a full heart, with a whole l'shem yichud, with a whole thing that he's now in a matzav of sin. The sin is in a complete way by a goy, and it's not so by Klal Yisrael. It's not so by a Yid. And it's important for us to remember. We have to remember that the halacha is like Rab Meir. We paskin like Rab Meir, that bein kach ubein kach nikru uvonim. That no matter what we do, and no matter where we are, and no matter what we've done in the past, HaKadosh Baruch Hu bein kach nikru uvonim. It's not like we're just called children of Hashem when we're perfect. The halacha is that we paskin like Rab Meir, that no matter what's going on, bein kach ubein kach, either way, we are called children. And even though we're going to read in the next couple of weeks, next Thursday night, we'll discuss the schedule after Shivasa B'Tammuz, we begin the Bein HaMetzarim, and if Mashiach doesn't come before then, we have a lot of thinking to do. But the Navi, we're going to see some psukim that are unbelievable. In the Haftarah, we're going to read, we're called Banim Mashchisim. We are called children that corrupt. We're called Banim Lo Emun Bam. Banim that have no emunah, that there's no trust. But says in the Nesivos Shalom, do you notice something interesting over here? When we're called Banim Mashchisim, Banim Le Emun Ba, the word Banim is still there. It's not like we have become Anoshim that don't have emunah, Anoshim that don't trust in Hashem, Anoshim that are corrupt. We are still Banim, that we are still called Banim, and that is like Hibit Oven B'Yakov, that Hashem still keeps us close as His children, that even after almost 2,000 years of Golus, when we've done so much wrong, and there have been so many tzaras and so much punishment and so much going on, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I want to bring you back soon. You're still Banim, and that's the lesson of our Parsha, Lahibit Oven B'Yakov, because it's not complete. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows that inside every one of us wants to and needs to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu.